Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful, empowered harmonizers. We are zooming in and focusing in on another great viewer question, and that is to talk about, discuss, and look at the experience of the narcissist and jealousy. The narcissist and sort of envy. And how do they become envious of others? Do they become jealous? And the answer will unequivocally become yes, even of things that normally you would not think that someone would or really logically should become jealous of. That in particular will be the focus or target of their untoward gaze, their jealousy, their anger, their blame, and really just the, like we're saying, basically just the narcissist feeling of envy or jealousy. Particularly, for example, if you come from a stable background and they are unstable, that your background can then be their trigger, their contempt, their target of envy or jealousy. So they might have spats with you about their family, and they get them sort of propped up, even though their family is very dysfunctional. They're going to use that as a pivot point if it makes them very uncomfortable and they have a deficit or a lag in that area. So even though it should be your strength, even though you should not be made to feel ashamed, even though that should be an okay checking out, radiant part of your life, or not something to be hidden or ashamed of, or should be really controversial, it just is what it is. Rather than having to put that in a box and stow it away, you should be able to, have that trust and, and not feeling as an object of content or contention, or have the finger pointing at you, or, disrespect, or, lack of cooperation when it comes to your family. That's just a for example. Same thing, it can be like that for your job. If you have a stable job and their job is sort of unstable or up and down, then they might have an envy or a jealousy over, your type of employment. And, then you've got just sort of, they're hanging on to this, and it creates a tension. It creates a point of conflict. It creates something that can be triggered really at any moment when it gets really needed or severe. It's like the ammunition in the narcissist toolkit. They will pull out their envy or jealousy, to create a tension if things begin to get stable, because the narcissist doesn't like to get, found out, or when it comes to reality, when it comes to not the fantasy, but the actual reality, even if the reality is pretty good, the narcissist usually isn't up for that game. They're not up for that gander. They're not up for that situation. They're more up for something that's more along the lines of the, fantastical, the illusory, the, what they're putting as their life, even though it will lead oftentimes to disappointment, fatigue, certainly for a lot of people, a feeling of a false or empty life, something that feels, it doesn't feel meaningful. It feels that it is lacking. So don't put up with, that emotional downward spire, that when there is, you've received sort of adverse treatment or abusive treatment around areas of your strength. Realize that they're probably trying to get you to just own that as your strength, or have a change of heart, or create a change of heart in you, so you start denying your strength, so it doesn't have to be, where you shine. Because if you shine, and you can be sort of competitive then with that narcissist. In other words, they always need to have that they are outshining others in most areas or ways, unless your shine is about helping to make them shine. So it becomes very depleting. It becomes very exhausting. You can feel very extinguished in the process, and you don't, a lot of people feel guilt, though, recognizing and realizing that and coming to terms with that that they are being, they're sort of living that martyr in the relationship where they're sacrificing a lot, or they're, being underrepresented, unhappy, unfulfilled in the relationship, and they're just sort of, dragging themselves across the ground, while the relationship goes on. And that's not a good place to be in. And don't be a martyr. Don't feel that you have to give yourself over to, the hands of whomever, to make a sacrifice. At some degree, sacrifice enough is enough. It's just don't allow it to be a source of contention in your life. Don't, get it sorted out, clean it out, just make that come clean and come clear, and make that sort of disappear or go away. In other words, be able to have a source of complete clarity, about what has gone on. And, it's especially insidious if your good heart has been made to be the object either of that's been taken advantage of, or been an object of jealousy, and really the narcissist and the psychopath are two different situations, two different people, and look at it in it's a completely different way. But as it stands with the narcissist, if you have a good, endearing, authentic quality, like you've got a good heart, you're caring, you're empathetic, you come from a good, solid family, doesn't have to be perfect, but, you've got some strengths, you might have some professional strengths, you have already had children that you bring to the family, beforehand, so you might have these established and stable relationships that can benefit them likewise, or pets, or a bigger place, or whatever it is, that, but can be oftentimes then sort of not looked upon with favoritism or acknowledged and validated as a strength. If anything, it will make them uneasy. They feel challenged. They can't match that energetically. They don't have a comeback. They don't have that full receptivity. They oftentimes are not receptive. And it feels like you're getting the cold, shoulder, one-off, diss-off, disrespect, even though it's something that's normal, natural, logical, etc. for the relationship. They aren't going to be in for it or up for it or even capable. They're just not made of that cloth. They are not made of that ilk. They are not of that caliber of a person. It's just not. You learn quite a bit that of what other people are sort of, they are not up for, that their actions speak louder than their words. You have to remember just some everyday rules of human behavior, particularly when it comes into light with its application towards these personality disordered people that, tend to be very hurtful and damaging and disrespectful and projecting a lot of negativity, skepticism onto others. And like they're being irritated and then acting like you're irritating when you're not an irritant. Everybody who doesn't do them in a specific way can become an irritant. And then they're very irritated by other people, oftentimes very opinionated, disagreeable. Have you, encountered people like that? Control freaks, whatever it is you want to say. But, if you are highly irritated by a lot of people, then that is going to say more about you than them. And that can oftentimes be the narcissist. So you have to realize and recognize it is not you. I can't tell you how deep the hurts, the criticisms from these types of people have laid into the hearts of those who were in love, in there for the long haul, in there for the real deal, the authentic. This could be family members to you or married, family, and it just becomes really a weighty situation, and you've taken it on and you've taken it hard and you've felt a big hit from it, and it can be shocking. It can feel like it tears a hole in your favorite sweater. It just feels like a gaping wound or hole or something missing or irreplaceable. But at some point you got to kind of just take off that sweater and get rid of it and start anew, and get a better feel for your own skin, and one that isn't tolerant to this abuse, one that isn't tolerant to being disrespected, one that isn't numbed out to having, given the short end of the stick or being deceived or lied to. Not that you have to overreact, but that you're not just, you're going to see and acknowledge the red flags and not get hyperventilated when it happens, but know it for what it is and, receive it and take it to, intellect and heart and balance that out. Being able to identify it will be a good takeaway skill from a relationship with someone who has been narcissistic. And, has used, those other sort of projection types of, jealousy. The jealousy and envy can, cause a lot of people to disown the good parts of themselves. Oh, yeah, I guess my family isn't so great. Yeah, you're right. It is not normal for them to stay together. Yeah, you're right. Maybe good people do get, divorced. And then you're like, what? All of a sudden people then are sort of disowning the very strengths and fabric of the, it's just this whole, it just becomes like an emotional tennis match of back and forth until somebody gets swept off the court, and then whoever's left standing wins. It's just like a game that just becomes played by just these erroneous rules that just end up being created at the end of the game, that you don't get a chance to create them, but you have to play by them all of a sudden, and it just becomes a no-win situation. I mean, you can go right, left, zigzag, up and down, and it still won't change. So it's this surrendering and, gratitude, really, So as a, begin to look at your takeaway lessons learned as a gem, as a shining example, as a truth, as a light post for your journey, as, a bedrock to rest yourself on, and count on and rely on. Begin then that degree of self-reliance and center in self, not that is narcissistic centered, but that is grounded and centered and in ownership of its energy and its responsibilities, and not feeling guilty when guilt is not appropriate, not feeling anxiety when anxiety is not appropriate, not feeling sad and melancholy when being overly sad and melancholy is not appropriate. Being able to have checks and balances within yourself and knowing how to dial it in, tone it down, tone it up, moderate it, be able to have those, negotiative abilities within is a very good takeaway gift and skill from these types of relationships. Being able to also then assist others when you see this happening, so you can be the saving grace. You can give them the pat on the shoulder and go, whoa, man, I don't think so. Check this out, and then you have that talk. Or, for your child, who has a teacher who might, not be fair or something of that nature. Or you might have a family doctor who also you might, be uncomfortable with, that, are exhibiting these. You might have other legal representatives, other people in your neighborhood. I know we had a viewer who, talks about that. We're not going to go into that in depth here at this video, but, you might just be the target of some sort of envy or jealousy, and you feel like you don't even have anything to be jealous about, and what little you do, how could you be envious and jealous, trying to take away my last, penny from an empty jar of self-esteem. It's just, you feel that every bit of your core is, can be up for grabs. It's just, it becomes even, like we're, a psychopath who will frankly surround themselves with people who display an abundance of very authentic behaviors will be a source of, learning for a psychopath. So a psychopath will then engage for their opportunity to learn a little bit more about what emotions are like for people, or they can see that you're sort of agreeing, naive, or fresh, or new to their arts of seduction, or whatever their psychotalk word salad, narcissist word salad is, the enigma that they play, manipulation in those things. And then it's to say that, they get offset, and then they trigger this person to fall for a very deliberate set of manipulations and outcome, and one of those might be for them to learn, about all their traits and what it is that they can fall for, and what kind of, word salad that they can use that they will fall for, or they'll become addicted to. And then, they'll just have this sort of studying, and then have a whole, double life going on full time behind the scenes, again, like they have enough time and energy to run two lives simultaneously. It's just a very odd, strange thing. I mean, some even have, third lives going. Their energy depends at their stage of life, how old they are. Some, I mean, if you've ever met who go on to the end, I mean, they've had maybe 11 marriages. I mean, it gets to be like really crazy. Then you got 87 married to 41, and you got kids from all sorts of different sources, and it's just a catastrophe. You don't want to be on that neighbor's block. You don't want to be that person. You don't want to be associated. You want to go no contact. You want to move your internal hardware and your internal real estate away from that neighborhood. You don't need no vandalism, people stealing your copper wire, whatever it is you've got. You don't need these, this sort of emotional theft, from you. And so you need to, go no contact with these people, especially if they're really sort of envious and jealous of any, like, you can't give them any more one little crumb, like you don't even have ownership of any, like, you just feel like you just are supposed to give it all away to them, and you don't have any sort of dignity, or that you're insensitive when it's like, really, let's like look at the bigger picture. In other words, there has to be people on the same page or seeing things correctly, and it's what has to be done. It's what has to be sorted out, and no hard feelings. Don't take things the wrong way. If they overreact and mistreat, well, let them go. Then let them play their game, and don't step into the boxing ring. But go no contact. I mean, how hard is this got to be? Enough is enough. Turn it around and look at, if it was the other way, how would they feel? But they don't. They lack empathy. They can't see things from another perspective. They don't want to. They don't want to be challenged. And so if they can knock down a pillar of strength within you, they've just caused your house to crumble, and at least then they're the ones standing, so they're able to retain a sense of superiority. It's just, when the relationship gets seasoned to a specific point, when it gets mature long enough, when it gets ripe long enough, then you're going to see some of this very unfortunate jealousy. If you're married with a kid, they can be then, the child, your precious child, can be the object of jealousy, or the object of envy. They're getting a fresh start in life. They're getting their education. They're getting the support. They're getting, the nutrition now. Everything is, on such a higher level. They're sometimes learning computers very early. They have a lot of advantages to lead a prosperous life with education and jobs, and being able to pay a mortgage, even in their young ages, getting a mortgage, getting, a job, getting their health insurance, getting a little yard, they see this bright shining star, and then that can be where the carpet tries to get ripped out, and then they sometimes they might win and prove victorious, and then, cause you to withhold funds from your child's college account, or not attend their graduation, or other things of this nature. that are upsetting, or you said no to being mistreated. That could have, you came back with a strength. I am not going to be mistreated. It's just not even going to go there. Just not giving any of your energy away. If you've been there and done that and gotten the t-shirt, and in fact, you didn't even give the t-shirt away because you didn't want anyone else to have to wear that t-shirt, then you've been there and done that. You don't have to return, rinse, wash, repeat, hammer your house back together, because you just had the big bad wolf around. Again, that you didn't realize you were leading into your house all the while, but because you were going to back down. Don't lie to yourself. Do not lie to yourself. Make a promise to yourself that you can keep. If you're in a habit of making grandiose habits to yourself that you can't keep, then you're perpetuating a sense of disappointment. You are keeping a sense of a letdown in your life. You are keeping you're keeping melancholy and depression running as your neurochemistry, like a recipe of soup. You're creating that neurochemistry on your everyday life because you're believing that that's the best place for you. If you are setting goals that are not pragmatic, that are not attainable, you have to step down, from the grandiose things and then be freaked out, scared off. I can't make this. This is too much. You're setting yourself up for failure because you're going way too big. Completing a cycle of something that is fulfilling to you, and doing it and making it small will give you the courage and the confidence enough to then apply it and do something else small and then something else small, until once you're doing a lot of small things, then it really adds up. So look at the level of your self-talk, when you're sort of coming and bouncing back from this and realizing, man, maybe I can see where the narcissist or the psychopath had that jealousy and we had that energetic mismatch and I didn't handle it right. I didn't play it right. It was not well played. It was not well sorted out. It was chaos. Who could have done different? What are you to do? It can be your own personal, just been there, done that. Let's not call it anything else. Let's just keep it helps you to, once you get into describing your experiences, with time will heal, and it's not like it'll be forgotten, but it'll definitely, be subsided and just sort of meld into whatever. But it's to understand that you don't want to overly emotionally describe your background again and again with that same emotional undertone. It was, because when you do, especially if it relates to disempowering yourself, then every time you tell your story, you're going to be disempowering yourself, and you're resetting yourself back down to an emotional zero. Yep, now I got to crank it way up again. There you are. Now you're back down to zero. How do you get from 0 to 30? How do you get back there again? How do you get that, boom? You're like, boom. You can't even get up, get there, do that, show up, let alone smile, put on a happy dance, or whatever it is you're supposed to do. You're trying to back down, and you can't back down soon enough. So it can be a disappointment. It can be a difficulty, when you've been, targeted, but, and been, especially, sort of just been, made, your good parts the object of envy or jealousy, because it's a real disconnect. It creates a real cognitive dissonance. Something that's sane and normal and coherent and stable. Why should that be an object of contention? Why should you be misled to believe that? Why? And because maybe you were vulnerable and you had accepted it, and you love this person so much that, you got to be careful. That's got to be a lesson learned. That has to be a boundary. And the more value that you can create and put into your boundary, the better. So, the better quality of your boundary creation, the better. So it doesn't have to be the thickest, but the quality, meaning what it is that you will tolerate and what it is that you don't tolerate. In other words, being very clear on those edges and not being too edgy, but being finely tuned enough that you know how to enforce and back up and execute with verbally 5 to 7 words that will communicate your feeling. And do it with a dispassionate or neutral tone that isn't overly hyped or lacking energy and conviction. That's just stated gutturally and authentically. That is key. So, and knowing then what are going to be the game changers for you, and not just be the other way around, where you always feel that there's always, game changers and you don't even have a chance, with some of these other types of individuals. So, I hope that you are able to identify these valuable qualities within you and know what they are and feel equal to accepting them and embracing. Knowing what they are, accepting and embracing, and enhancing. Making sure that you get a good handle on who you are and what you're about. Getting a good, if not better, handle. And becoming educated in areas that you want to become better informed. Developing yourself into a person of character. Having some fine moments, having some more refined moments, being able to go places and do things, developing your interests, having enough room to be able to do that becomes important. It's a very crucial thing that you are able to maintain your character even in relationships, so it doesn't get watered down, washed out, compromised into non-existence. That's what can happen oftentimes in these relationships. They can really wear the better parts of others away. So you kind of are feeling like, because you can't really be yourself or be defined because then your own definition, the more defined you become, then the more contentious that they can be and try to point out your strength as a flaw. So it becomes a very, very difficult it creates those mind games. And for some people, it becomes so repetitive that's the only life that they have known. Or they have only known until their 30s or 40s or 50s or even longer. So you have to really recognize the crossroads with where it's at and being able to, identify that and protect and not be denied your positive and just your own character of who you are and what you identify with and what you value and will continue to protect. Know this is way of your boundaries and standards and allow that to help you to shine, and it will become automatic. It won't be a lot of work. It'll be just something that you are and you can represent, and you will not allow yourself to be threatened, intimidated, lied to, or you'll be able to observe, especially as you do more of these observations, you'll become more astute in seeing it when it does arise, and you'll know when to back away, you'll know when to go walk the other direction, you'll know when not to do the text, you'll know when not to be triggered and to fall for that. It is your strength. Begin to embrace and know. This is your buddy. Peace and harmony with you here today, and I hope that these videos do help. Please share, please subscribe, and please donate for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. Peace out. Have a beautiful day.